My name is Betty Berline, and as you know, I was born in Poland. And when the war broke out, I was just about to go to high school, but I didn't. We were not allowed to go to school. As Jewish children, we were not allowed to be in schools. We were not allowed to have an organization. We were not to go to a library. But thank God that at my home, there were always books, and my father and my sisters all were educated, and we talked, and even though we were always quiet and didn't go outside and didn't gather with anybody, but we had a chance, whatever we needed to know, religiously, historically. But the most important thing was that we had to be so isolated from all the people, the schools. I went from kindergarten, with the friends, with the neighbors. We had to be isolated. We also had to wear the Star of David on our left hand. I tried not to, but it was risky. Or I would put a shawl over my shoulders and cover it. But anyway, I couldn't hide publicly because I looked very much like a Jewish girl with a black curly hair. You know, I mean, black eyes, typical Jewish, where in Poland most people are blonde with blue eyes. I had two sisters that had blue eyes and blonde hair, but I just couldn't. They were not as, they didn't feel like going. They were scared. They were afraid. If somebody will ask something, maybe she will say something that it will not be very well for all of us. In 1941, when the Germans already prepared to invade the Russians, we were about 20 miles from the border, from the River San, that the Germans had this side and the Russians had the other side. They started to build barracks, and a lot of soldiers came to the. I was actually in a town because it was summer. After vacation, we were still in the house where we used to go for summer. So it was a small town, but they started to build barracks, and the soldiers were all over. However, I have to say, the soldiers didn't care. The Gestapo, the SS, they had the power of doing whatever they wanted. The soldiers sometimes were very nice. They didn't like the war probably any more than we did, but they had to be there. When they started to build the barracks, it was very cold. The year 1940-41, the winter was unbelievably cold. And whoever put in the windows, they all cracked, and the soldiers couldn't be inside. My father told one of the soldiers that he would do it, and they won't crack. So after a while, they came, and they said, okay, if you can show us that you can put in the windows and they won't crack, have the job. So if my husband worked for them, we didn't have to go shovel the snow on the roads. We didn't have to go to other dirty work. We were home. And also my father would get, when they brought them home, they would give us coal and a bread. You know, everything was practically impossible to get. You couldn't shop, you couldn't buy. It wasn't. The Germans had everything. So after my husband put it, and it was okay, it was in May, one morning the Gestapo walked in and took away my father from us, and we never saw him again. It was early in the morning, they took him, they took a few other men. I was running after the horse and buggy. They said that they'd taken him to jail, to a little city. So I was running after, but my father tried to make sure that I am not running. So I went a different way, and when I came to that city, I knew where the jail is, and I stopped on something to see if my father's there, and he saw me, and he motioned, go. So I went back home, and I was with my mother. We have also my older sister was with us, with 2 children. And from then on, it was impossible to do anything. But we just survived, because we did have some friends among the people. So we would exchange things. My sister had a big store, like the fabric shop. So she brought materials to us. So we would go to the villages, give them material, and they would give us bread, milk, flour, whatever they had. They didn't have too much, but whatever they have, they shared. In 1942, August 29th, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. The sun didn't come out yet. It was still dark when they knocked on the door, and we opened the door, and they said, whatever you have on, you have to get out. There were trucks standing on the road, and they took everybody, children, my sister with the 2 children, my mother and another sister. They took us on the truck. We didn't know where we're going. We couldn't ask. Nobody would answer. But when they took us out from the house, I was so angry that I started to run. But they pushed me back. You go with your family. I was on the truck, and one of my sisters said, you're going to jump. I looked at her, because the truck was huge. And she opened, in the back, what they had, they closed off. She opened it. She says, as soon there is an opportunity, you will jump. And all I could hear my mother say, no, I don't want to see that. But we were escorted with one car in the front with Gestapo, and in the back, also a car full of Gestapo. The car in the back stopped to give some orders by a Jewish house, and at that moment, my sister pushed me out. I jumped out, and I went, by the road to the ditch. I didn't break a arm or a leg, nothing. I just jumped, and I looked around. I saw the car that was behind passed me by. I picked up myself, and I started to walk towards the fields, not where they took our people, because I knew I cannot go with the road. I had to go so that nobody sees me. I was walking all day. I knew one of my sisters was living about 30 kilometers from us. I knew approximately where it is. However, I couldn't go with the road. So I went with all kind of, this was harvest time, so I was going between corn and between wheat and all kind, directing my way towards where I knew she is living. She also lived close by a church, so I knew I was looking for a steeple, so I would know that I'm on the right road. I walked all day. My food was, if I could pull out someplace a carrot, because it was farmland, or anything. And I walked, it was almost night, and I didn't know where I am. Finally, I looked up, and I saw the steeple. I says, my God, I'm right here. When I came to my sister, they knew already what happened, and they were all packed to go hide someplace. They had friends, they had people that took them in. I was a stranger, and they didn't have room for me. But my brother-in-law went to a place where he hid a great deal of his fortune. And he said, just for a few days, until we find a room for him. So I was there for 2 weeks. They kept me on the attic. They gave me to eat. And my sister looked for a place. I also was in a way for them like a decoy. Nobody knew me. I didn't know anybody. But I knew where they are. So it helped them to know that there is somebody in the family, that nobody else knows where they are. And so from there, I was going from place to place, wherever we could find a barn, an attic. And I had one sister that had 2 children, and my youngest sister was with her. And she was in a house, you know, in just a house all the way in the fields. A very poor family. They took her in, they were excited that she comes with the children. And when I came there, she said, we have to find a place for you. So they found places. Then in January 1943, they discovered my sister, and they took her away with her children, with her sister-in-law. I was away, and my younger sister was away. But before she went hiding, she had her oldest son was 4 years old. And she knew a farmer that they were very close. She dressed up the kid, gave him whatever they needed, and they took him to live. They had children his age that he would play with the children. And so he was there alone. But when they caught my sister, it was winter, and they had a sled. And you know, the sled goes quiet. You don't hear any noise. So my sister pushed out my younger sister. She says, go get my son. Don't let anybody take him to the Gestapo. Let him be killed with us. So, and I was in a different village. I knew that they caught her already. I knew because they was talking, they took her to places where she gave them furs and materials and everything. They killed her anyway. So I was in that village, and my sister came to see me. She says, where am I going to take, where are we going to go now? And then she remembers that my older sister told her, you know, there is a lady, very poor, a widow, and she used to come and shop in our store, and I used to give her, she never had enough money. She says, okay, whenever you have, you will pay. She knew the name. She knew the name. She walked into that lady. I can't tell you how poor she was. Her kitchen floor was dirt, not even nothing, just dirt. And she walked in and she said, I am a sister from this lady, and I need a place for my sister. We have to hide. She says, what are you talking about? Where is your sister? She says, my sister is no more, but I have her child and my sister, the other one. Can we come here just for a little while, just until it's quiet down? And she says, wait a minute, I do remember. I remember when I came to your sister, and even your brother-in-law said, oh, come on, there are so many people, and you keep talking to that lady. She gave me material of a skirt to go to church, and she told me, don't worry. I had a zloty, you know, like $1 one. She said, take the zloty whenever you're going to have money, you will pay it, don't worry, go. She says, for this, I'm going to take you and your sister and the kid. The most important was the child. Now, how do we get the child from one village to the next? Daytime? Forget it. So the man that he was hiding there told my sister, I will take a sack, put him in the sack, and put him over my shoulder like a piglet. If somebody stops me, I'll tell him I'm going to my brother. And that's how they did. The road from one village to the other went through a cemetery, a huge cemetery. And I had to go by myself at night through that cemetery. I can explain to you the fear, the pain, but I had to go. So I came there, and she said, okay, the child, first of all, he cannot talk. He cannot, I know, he can do nothing. You're going to sit on the attic. Okay, the attic was okay, but the child, and the house was close by to another house and to another house. But this wasn't the worst. The child was full of lice. And when I and my sister had long hair and clean, and here he comes full of lice. So we undressed them. She had a cow. So I said, take me in the barn. I took all his clothes and put it on the cow. I hope that the lice will have better time on the cow. And I told her to bring some hot water. And what is it? It's like petroleum, neft, you know? It smells awful, but it's part of the gas. Bring me this, I put on this on his hair, and we washed the clothes, and we got rid of the lice. Then we went on the attic. Can you imagine, I'm sure every one of you has a sibling, 4 years old, don't talk, you're hungry, you sleep on the straw, you can't look out because it's covered all around. How do you keep a child like this quiet and hungry? The worst part, hungry. But somehow I had a little knife, a little one. And you know, where the boards come together, I scraped out from the inside so that I could put my eye and see what's going on outside. So I kept him. I says, you can look outside to make him quiet. He looked out and he turns around to me. He says, did you see there is a white chicken and a brown chicken? How come they so different? I says, don't worry. You see, so I told him, I have dark eyes and my sister has blue eyes. But anyway, it was a moment that he was busy. He didn't cry, he didn't jump, he didn't walk. We also have, you know, the Polish army. They were a part of them that they went to England from, you know, they fought, they were defeated, but England took them in, and they had the underground. They sent letters to the Polish underground. So one of the guys from the underground, we met him, so he said, don't worry, if the Gestapo comes to town, he was a smith. I will knock so hard 3 times, you will know that the Gestapo is in town. Okay, so we have a friend. And anytime, if she had something to eat, she shared it. It was summer. They went early in the morning to the field to do whatever they had to. She brought us 2 bottles of water and a piece of bread, as much as she could. And we were sitting all day long, hot, cold, who cared? We were on the attic. We were there for we didn't look for another place because she said, you can stay here. We gave her as long as my brother-in-law was living, we have all kinds of stuff to give, but under one condition, she's not going to sell it in this part where we are. She had to go 2-3 villages away, and then she would exchange for butter, for whatever she could. And she came home anyway, and they had enough. My nephew didn't know what it means, a vegetable or a fruit. We didn't have, and she didn't have it. Her son was working in a place, a count, you know, in Poland where a lot of counts. And this was Count Potocki, the richest one in Poland. And his palace and everything was close to that village. And he worked in the garden. I said, you know what? Bring the onion. He says, I can't. I said, this doesn't mean steal. Just put it in your pocket and bring it to us. That onion, my nephew still tells me, though my teeth are the onion what Yashu brought us. That was the only vitamin that he had during the entire time. But okay, we survived. And exactly 2 years later, on August 29th, 1944, the Russian army walked in. I mean, it was shooting before. We were lying on the attic, scared because they were shooting back and forth. But Sunday morning, early in the morning, the boy came running on the attic. The Russians are here. We were so stunned, so frozen that we couldn't even be happy. I couldn't believe it. He says, come down and see, they're all over. They're not going like the Germans came with tanks, and they walked. So the Russians came. For a whole week, I was still sitting on the attic. I was afraid to go out. But one day, my sister borrowed the skirt from one of the girls, and she went to town. She went to town, and she said, I was listening. People were talking, and then I hear, they took over the villa, the Jewish villa. Oh, she says, if they talk about Jews, they must be Jews. So, and she knew exactly where that place is. She went there, and she stood by the fence. There were 2 Russian soldiers with guns and with rifles standing by the door. She says, oh my God, I ran from there and I'm coming here to be killed. She stood by the fence and walked back and forth, didn't see anybody. Finally, one of the boys walked out and he saw somebody's walking back and forth. He came over, he says to her,